Hello world, I've got a good one for you today. I am checking out the new Jeffree Star Beauty Killer eyeshadow palette. Hey guys, Shelly here, and guess what else is here? So the Jeffree Star Beauty Killer eyeshadow palette has been released and it is gorgeous. Oh. So I was not originally planning to order the Beauty Killer palette, at least not right away or until I had expendable cash, because looking at the palette itself, it just seemed like there weren't any colors that I couldn't duplicate elsewhere. I'm kind of a palette hoarder. I have so many Urban Decay palettes with so many amazing bright colors that I really thought there probably wasn't anything in this Beauty Killer palette that I didn't already have something I could get a reasonable dupe with. I'm kind of a sucker for hype. I'm also kind of a sucker for a good challenge, and I had a feeling that this palette was going to sell out pretty doggone immediately. So it was going on sale at 10 a.m. Pacific, which is 1 p.m. Eastern time, and I happened to be available around that time. So that morning when I woke up, I thought, well, I'm going to try to get it, and I'll set my alarm, and if I happen to get it on the first try, then I'll get it. And I figured chances were that I wouldn't get it on the first try, and then I wouldn't get it, which was kind of the outcome I was kind of hoping for, because I really wasn't planning on spending money that day. But I started refreshing my browser at what would have been like 9:59 a.m. Pacific time, like a minute before it was to officially go on sale, and knowing that web servers very rarely have the accurate time set, and that most software, if there's not a human clicking the button that says go on sale right now or go live right now, if it's been pre-programmed, then it's using the web server's time. And I figured, well, they're never really quite perfectly accurate. So it turned out that it did go available about a minute before it was supposed to, and I did get it, and I got it, and I got it. So here it is. And I was shocked that it was being shipped priority mail, and that's normal. But coming from California, I'm on the East Coast, so this thing traveled coast to coast in 3 days, including the day that I ordered it. So they must have shipped this out immediately. So kudos to Jeffree Star Cosmetics for the amazingly fast turnaround time from order to shipment. The one kind of bummer is that a lot of people couldn't get the palette on the first day that it released because they went out of stock in literally 3 minutes. I believe it was 10:02 Pacific time that it was out of stock, but they had more to restock just a few days later. So I don't know if that was a marketing ploy or what, but I hope that everybody that wants this palette can get it. So I'm going to show you the palette and give you my first impressions. I also did this eye look using this palette, and I will tell you how I accomplished that. The palette itself, it really is more than meets the eye. So one thing that I found was that when I swatched these out, they don't really look the same in the palette as they do on the skin. So for example, one that really surprised me was Violence. And Violence is the top row center purple, and here is how it looks on my finger. And when I swatch it out, look how reddish. It's like a cranberry purple. And in the pan, it does not look like a cranberry purple. So really surprised there. A few of these have that sort of issue. Vanity looks like maybe the deepest kind of a plum black gray, but it really swatches as a reddish brown, like a brown with a plum red tint to it. So that was a pleasant surprise for me, because even though in the pan I thought this was not going to be anything different from what I'm used to or other things that I might be able to come up with at home. It swatches out significantly differently in some of the colors than they appear in the pan. So that was a pleasant surprise for me because it really opened up. This palette has more options than I was expecting because these colors are quite a bit different than than what I was expecting. So let me do one more swatch here on my hand. This is that sort of gold color. And then I'll show you my photographed swatches. I was a little disappointed with the gold. It's called Rich Bitch. Only because on my skin tone, it kind of swatches more yellow than gold. But other than that, the shifts in the colors from the pan to swatch actually impressed me. It makes this a much more unique palette than I was expecting. There are 3 different finishes in this palette, so you've got a few matte shades, a few satin shades, and a couple shimmer shades. The shimmers are the aqua blue here, Expensive, the gold, Rich Bitch, and then Black Rainbow is another surprise in this palette. I'm out of fingers. Let me try my other hand. So it looks black, right? But there's this tiny, tiny micro glitter, and I don't know if it's going to show up on camera. First of all, look how black that is. I mean, black as the midnight sun. That's like eyeliner black. Like, it's black. But the glitter in it is just this tiny, tiny micro glitter. I don't know if you can see it, but it's perfect. The glitter pieces are just, I mean, barely meets the eye tiny pieces of glitter. They're multicolored glitter pieces, so there's blue and purple and gold and silver shimmering in there. It's really unique, and it's a matte shade, so it's going to work gorgeous for liner, but I can see doing like a super dramatic dark smoky eye with that on the lid, because it's not overkill, it's not glitter, it's just this perfectly unique, just right amount of shimmer's not even the right word because they're tiny little glitter specks. It's just really, really cool. I'm really impressed with what they did with that. Now, that teal blue Expensive has that same sort of glitter in it, but the glitter's the same color as the shadow. The other shades, I did have some fallout issues with Vanity, a little bit with Violence. Those are the 2 purple, the dark, really reddish brown, plum brown, and then the purple shade. And also the Courtney shade, your typical, well, that's probably going to be everybody's transition color, kicks up a ton of powder. But otherwise, the colors seem to go on very pigmented, maybe with the exception of Princess, this light purpley shade. That one I did have to layer up quite a bit to get it to show up on my skin. It's almost the same tone as my skin, just a little bit more of purple to it. But other than that, they're incredibly pigmented. They swatch beautifully. They blended beautifully on the eye. I had no trouble whatsoever with blending. It was a really, really, really nice palette to work with for the first time. So let's check out some swatches, shall we? Now, I am clearly fair-skinned, and just to give you an idea, I'm shade Light 42 in Kat Von D's Lock-It Powder Foundation. If you've done the Sephora Color IQ thing where they scan your face and give you a color, I'm a 2R03. So I'm basically neutral with cool undertones on the very fair side of things. I'm not the lightest of the light, but I'm almost the lightest of the light. So these are swatched on my arm, and I used primer. So this was the Maybelline Blur and Smooth primer, which I have found to be a complete dupe for the original formula of Urban Decay's primer potion. So they're swatched on my arm with primer, and I used a flat shadow brush to apply each of these shadows to my arm. So they are not finger swatched. They are swatched with a brush on primer. Confession and Violence look very similar. And I found that when I swatched them, it was last night, and I was using my lighting equipment, so 5400 Kelvin temperature daylight simulation equipment. This morning I tried Confession versus Violence again in daylight, actual sunlight conditions outside. They aren't as similar in outdoor conditions, but under indoor light they're very, very similar, and that's these two shades. So Violence, the purple that actually ends up swatching a little bit more of a cranberry, and then Confession, which ends up swatching sort of a reddish brown. But they do come out very similar next to each other. It really just depends what light you are looking at them under, which is true for most things, but those surprised me because in the pan, they really don't look anything alike. But those swatches I thought turned out lovely. Princess and China White, both you can see, were a little bit more difficult to swatch. So like I said, Princess, it really is the same tone as my skin. So I really have to build it up. Now on the eye, I used it on my eyes today on the mobile lid, and it did show up better than it did on the swatch on my arm. China White is really just a highlight color for me, and it might not even be bright enough to highlight on me, because I'm just Casper the Friendly Ghost over here. So the swatches I thought turned out really nice. I was really excited to see the variation in what the colors looked like in the pan versus what they looked like in a swatch. So let's move on to this eye look. The obvious first choice for an eye look coming out of this palette would be something with this pink and teal, because holy cow, they look beautiful. But I didn't want to go with the obvious. Now, one thing that Jeffree Star did on his channel when he was sort of debuting the palette and its colors was showed you sort of the variations you can get out of the palette. So if you cover up these and just look at those 4 colors, and then if you cover up everything else and just look at these 4 colors, so those with the reds, and then move one over and look at those 4 colors, and then move one over and look at those 4 colors, you really have some starting points for different looks that you can get out of this palette. And I found that to be true. And since the color shift between Confession and Violence was so intriguing to me, I decided that I was going to start out with a look that went with those 4 colors, or at least primarily used those colors. So for this look, I started out with China White, and I just applied that all over my lid and crease to sort of take the tackiness out of my primer and give everything a base to start from. Then I went in with Courtney, that sort of peachish transition color, and I applied that with a fluffy brush all over my crease and slightly above my crease because I do have hooded lids. So in order to get any color to show up, I've really got to bring it above where my hood covers my mobile lid. That shade is a little warm for me for a transition shade, but it ended up being okay. I was a little regretful at first that I had used it, but I changed my mind at the end and decided that I like it. Then I went in with Princess on 2/3 from the inner corner to 2/3 of my mobile lid, and I really had to layer that on because it took a little while for that one to build up a bit of color. Then in the outer third, I used Violence, that sort of cranberry purple shift purple color. Then I went in with a crease blending brush, but a dense crease blending brush, and sort of targeted the inside, like the deepest part of my crease with Confession, and brought that all the way from the outer crease to the inner crease. Then I went in with just a little bit of Vanity to darken the outer V of each eye, just a little bit. I took a little bit of Vanity and a little bit of Violence under my lower lash line, went in with China White for inner corner highlights and beneath my brow bone, and that was about it. I finished it up with Kat Von D's tattoo liner in Trooper, and I am wearing Ardell number 110 natural lashes and Smashbox X-rated mascara. So that is the eye look. Let me give you a couple of close-ups. There you have it, the Beauty Killer eyeshadow palette from Jeffree Star Cosmetics. My first impressions and my first eye look with this palette. If you liked this review and sort of first look, give me a thumbs up below. If you would like to see more eye looks from this palette, please leave me a comment. If you haven't subscribed already, I encourage you to do so. You will get updates every time I post a new video, which is every single week. That way you can be sure you don't miss out on any of my videos. Why am I singing to you? I don't know. But anyway, thanks for spending some time with me and taking the time out of your day to watch this and enjoying makeup with me. Take care of each other. Bye-bye. Let's check out some swatches, shall we? So